in 26 minutes, 6 assists. Here's Walker dishing off Barrett, now Randle. Driving by Alvarado, and then he throws it away.
And he hears it from the crowd.
Last year, the Knicks and Hawks both finished with an identical record, claiming the 4th and 5th seeds of the Eastern Conference. For both teams, it looked like the start of something special, the start of a new era. These teams seemingly had successful rebuilding stories just a year ago, returning to the playoffs after years of mediocrity. But currently, they're both on the outside of the playoffs looking in. In this video, I want to talk specifically about the New York Knicks, a team expected to make another jump this year, and yeah, that does not look like the case. What's going on with this upstart franchise that finally looked like they got their stuff together? Instead, they went backwards. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and today, let's talk about the problems with the New York Knicks. What's different this season compared to last? Without further ado, let's begin. Julius Randle's 2020-21 season was by far the greatest season of his career up until this point, but it was also a huge outlier. I mean, it was a contract year for him. He was aiming for a huge payday from the Knicks, and perhaps exceeded well above all his expectations. His three-point shooting especially was a huge outlier. He never shot over 40% from 3 prior to that, and yet that season, all of a sudden, he started hitting 41% of his threes on over 5 attempts a game. Randle kinda got exposed in the playoffs though, but his stellar regular season play earned him a massive 4-year $117 million extension. However, right at the start of this season, Randle showed a clear sign of regression. We thought it was just a slow start and he'd get back into rhythm, but it turns out he's just not the same player he was a year ago. The former All-Star is now having his least efficient season since his sophomore year. He's had multiple games where he looks so lethargic and rightfully got booed from the Knicks crowd. Games where he shot 1 for 7, or 1 for 9, 2 for 11, it's far too common. That, combined with the most turnovers of his career, Randle looks like he just finessed the Knicks. Not just that, but his whole demeanor and body language is just off. It's almost like he played his tail off for a massive payday and just decided to say, screw it, and not care anymore. Now, the trade rumors are rampant. The media, the fans, everybody questions if Randle truly wants to be part of this franchise. When a reporter asked him if he's still committed, Randle responded, "I still want to be a part of it. I still want to see this thing through. I still want to be a part of trying to bring a championship to the Knicks." Fortunately, unlike most disgruntled players, Randle truly wants to be a New York Knick. He's always the first at practice and the last to leave. It's not a lack of work ethic like you think it is. He made it clear to the organization and his teammates that he wants to be part of this process. And despite his shoddy play, he wants to be here for the long haul. Of course, that depends if the Knicks want to keep him, too. The signing of Kemba Walker was seen as somewhat of a steal. He signed for a measly 2-year $18 million deal, as the Knicks hoped he'd regain that spark he once had. The results have been pretty meh, honestly. Walker was supposed to be an upgrade over Elfrid Payton, but he's not even that much better. He's become more focused on the three-point shot over the last few years, now shooting over half his attempts from beyond the arc. The Knicks wanted him and Evan Fournier because they lost Reggie Bullock's three-point prowess. The Knicks had the 3rd highest three-point percentage in the league before, but that dropped to 11th, mostly due to the loss of Reggie Bullock and Randle's decline. Walker's contract by itself is a very valuable commodity. He's paid what he's worth, but there's still the fact that he can ball out on any given night. Perhaps a contender would take a chance on him, and the Knicks can snap something valuable in return. Remember how a few years ago, in the midst of a horrific 17-win season, Mitchell Robinson was the lone bright spot on the Knicks? As a rookie, he impressed Knicks fans amidst a season of misfortune. However, since then, he hasn't made any major strides in his game. His awareness has improved, but it hasn't translated to any tangible metrics or numbers. Adjusted for minutes, he basically did not improve at all. It's similar with other young Knicks players too. Immanuel Quickley is going through a sophomore slump. Perhaps the most shocking, RJ Barrett. A lot of folks expected this season to be his breakout year, to make the next jump into All-Star status. Instead, his game stagnated, and it looks like his shot selection has changed for the worse. With the Knicks' rotations, he's often playing farther away from the basket than he would like, and is now only taking 28% of his shot attempts at the rim, a career low. In an article, Adam Kester wrote one of my favorite descriptions of RJ Barrett. Quote, "Sometimes his strengths look like weaknesses, and his weaknesses look like strengths. He has some stretches of basketball where he looks like one of the most promising young two-way players in the league, and some stretches where he is simply one of the worst players in the league." The highs and lows have been extremely drastic, and consistency is something that just hasn't been there for Barrett. The issue is, Barrett gets pressured a lot whenever he initiates a play. The Knicks are sorely missing another wing player who can take some attention off him. Derrick Rose's absence has also hurt them in more ways than one. His production was one thing, but his leadership was more important than you think. Beyond the numbers, he was a veteran voice that provided stability to a young team that desperately needs it. Randle has said before that Rose was the leader of the team last season, and without his voice, there's a clear lack of guidance on the floor. Plus, you're also missing a solid point guard off the bench. That's what I love about Rose. Of course, his superstar days are long gone, but he molded himself into a premier bench player and developed a lethal three-point shot. He was always soft-spoken, and his leadership qualities were put into question back in the day. That's not the case anymore. He emerged into this new role as a mentor, and it works because he understands Randle's situation. He too was once asked to do everything on the court, and the pressure was burdening. Offensively, the Knicks were below average before, bottom 10 in the league in fact, and they've remained that way. The reason their record is so much worse now though is because of their change in defense. Going from 3rd to 11th might not seem like a huge deal, because 11th is still pretty good. But when you consider that their offense is 24th, that's a bad combination. Defense was their calling card. It's what Thibodeau is known for. It was the reason why they had a successful 2021 season, but they can't even rely on that anymore. To give you some context, the biggest change has been their three-point defense. They held opponents to the lowest three-point percentage in the entire league, as they shot only 33.7% against the Knicks. Now, opponents shot 35.2% against them as of this video. You might not think that's a huge difference, but it's noticeable over a long period of the season. It's not only the percentage that matters. The Knicks' defense leaving a lot of guys wide open is also creating too many easy opportunities for slashers too. Opponents are now having a much easier time penetrating the Knicks' defense than before. An article early in the season dissected the Knicks' defensive issues. Though some of these issues are resolved, many of them will remain a problem throughout the season. Quote, "The biggest change in the lineup has been the new starting backcourt of Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier, who are not known for their defense but have added some much-needed shooting punch. Opposing guards are finding it easier to get by the Knicks starting guards and into the paint, especially off screen and rolls. This forces the Knicks interior defenders like Robinson and Julius Randle or Knicks guards to rotate over and help, allowing for open shots on the perimeter." Of course, the Knicks are still a good defensive team, but they're not great anymore. They're not as disciplined as they used to be. Their rotations and switches used to look like a well-oiled machine. Now, it's more like a somewhat greasy machine. It still runs when you need it to run, but it'll break down once in a while, sometimes at the most important moments. Perhaps the most important reason why they're not doing as well as before is that the East has gotten significantly better compared to last season. There's much more competition, and the Knicks' off-season moves were basically lateral moves. They didn't help them reach the next level. It just kinda changed the dynamic of the team. Anyway, that sums up the Knicks situation. It's not hopeless by any means, they're still in the running to make the playoffs. It's gonna be tough though. Do you think the Knicks will make the playoffs again this year, or do you think it's gonna be out of reach? Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.